Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep with Devon Clunis' memoir, One, a story of hope in our time. And it's not just your typical autobiography. It tackles some, I guess you could say, big
Oh
issues.
yeah, social issues, policing, all that. But what's interesting is how he approaches these topics with such a sense of hope. Like it's really woven into the fabric of his story, which is pretty rare.
And for someone who, think about it. He grew up in rural Jamaica, then immigrates to Winnipeg. He becomes Canada's first black police chief, then Ontario's first inspector general of policing. Wow, talk about a journey.
Exactly. So his childhood in Harmonyville, Jamaica, you can't really compare that to anything we've experienced here, like no electricity, no running water. But he paints a really vivid picture of community, this deep sense of community and self-reliance that honestly I think a lot of people crave these days.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I gotta say, though, reading about his grandparents, that really got to me. Like the way he talks about their love, their belief in him, it just shines through. You can tell that's the foundation of his whole journey.
Oh, absolutely. And his mother's decision, leaving her kids behind to go to Canada so she could build a better future for them, the kind of sacrifice and courage that takes is just mind-blowing.
It sets the stage for his arrival in Winnipeg. Culture shock much. Think about going from Harmonyvale to a Winnipeg classroom in the 70s, no less. He talks about feeling like he's naked in a crowd of strangers, something a lot of immigrants and minorities unfortunately can relate to.
Right. And it's in that kind of isolating environment where he meets Miss Hannah, his grade 6 teacher. Her simple act of offering to help him catch up academically literally changed the course of his life.
Yeah.
It really underscores how much impact one person can have.
Oh, chills. Seriously, chills reading that part. It wasn't some huge gesture, just like genuine human connection. And look at the ripple effects.
Wow, yeah. And then he goes on to St. John's High School, pretty iconic institution in Winnipeg.
That's right. Big change from his previous school.
Yeah, St. John's. It's known for its diverse student body. And for Clunas, you know what? He finds his place through basketball. It's more than just a sport. It's like an anchor for him. It helps him develop leadership skills, and it gives him a sense of belonging.
And of course, got to mention Mr. Wedlake, his basketball coach, another one of those pivotal mentors who instilled those classic values, hard work and perseverance.
Totally. Mentors were so important for him. And then, well, this leads us to a pretty big turning point. He decides to join the police force. Not the most obvious choice, right?
Yeah.
Especially considering his experiences as a minority.
You'd think,
Yeah.
but he had this deep desire to serve, to really make a difference. And he saw policing as a way to, bridge that gap between law enforcement and those marginalized communities.
Absolutely. A noble goal, given the history,
Huh.
the often strained relationship between police and minorities.
Yeah. And he doesn't sugarcoat his early days as an officer either,
Yeah.
especially his time in the sex crimes unit. You really feel the emotional weight of what he witnesses,
Yeah.
the exploitation, the dark side of society.
He leans on his faith a lot to get through those times. It becomes his guiding force, not just personally, but even in his approach to policing. He even serves as a police chaplain, supporting his colleagues who are dealing with all that emotional baggage.
Okay, wait, a police officer and a chaplain? That's got to be pretty unique.
Incredibly unique. It really brought this sense of compassion and humanity to a job that, well, let's face it, often has a reputation for being kind of rigid,
Yeah.
detached.
So we've got this incredibly empathetic, faith-driven officer rising through the ranks. And it's not just luck. He takes on tough assignments, leads diverse departments,
Yeah, like the evidence control unit and records management.
proving that he can build trust and boost morale wherever he goes.
That's right. He's not afraid of a challenge. And then comes this landmark moment. His appointment as chief of police, the first black person to hold that position in Canada. It's historic, but it wasn't without its bumps in the road.
Right. His openness about his faith caused some controversy, right? That whole separation of church and state thing.
Oh, absolutely. It was a test of his commitment to staying true to himself. He didn't back down from his beliefs, but he was also willing to engage in dialogue with those who disagreed with him. Have those tough conversations.
Something we could all learn from these days. So, from taking on those tough assignments, leading diverse departments, you really see this thread of Clunis pushing for change from within the system. And it all kind of leads up to his vision for transforming policing in Winnipeg.
He's not about just reacting to crime, right? He's pushing for a proactive approach. He calls it crime prevention through social development.
Hold on, break that down for me. What does that actually look like in action?
Well, imagine this. Instead of just arresting someone for, say, drug possession, He wants to understand why they're using drugs in the first place. You know, tackling things like poverty, addiction, and lack of opportunity. That's what he sees as the key to creating a safer city.
So, addressing the root causes of crime instead of just treating the symptoms, that's a pretty big shift in thinking, especially for law enforcement.
Absolutely. And it led to some pretty innovative initiatives during his time as chief. For example, he transformed the vice unit into the counter-exploitation unit.
Interesting. What did that actually involve?
Well, instead of just focusing on arresting sex workers, they shifted to supporting them and going after those who were exploiting them. It was a bold move, a compassionate approach, recognizing the complexities of sex work and the vulnerabilities of those involved.
So you see how Clunis's experiences, his faith, his commitment to social justice, it all comes together to shape his approach to policing. But did this focus on social development extend to other areas too?
Absolutely. It informed how they dealt with youth involved in gangs. It was all about intervention and creating opportunities instead of just punishment. Recognizing that building strong, resilient communities is at the heart of real safety.
Okay, so this is all well and good in theory, but did it actually work? Did crime rates go down in Winnipeg?
They did. Crime rates dropped significantly during his time as chief. It was a testament to his leadership and the willingness of the Winnipeg Police Service to embrace this new way of thinking about policing. They really challenged the old, traditional ways of doing things.
It's quite a story.
It is.
So we've got this chief who's like reshaping how we think about policing, but then he retires, right? You'd think, okay, time to chill out, enjoy life, end of story.
Yeah, he definitely took some time to relax. Did some consulting, too, with U.S. law enforcement, sharing Canadian policing philosophies and all that.
Yeah.
But then 2020 happens, right? George Floyd's murder. It was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people. And for Clunis, it was like, okay, I can't just sit on the sidelines.
Even in retirement, he's pulled back in. Like he's got this mission.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that mission turns out to be a pretty big deal. He's appointed as Ontario's first Inspector General of Policing.
Okay, and I gotta admit, I was a little fuzzy on what that actually means. It sounds important, but...
Oh, it is. Think of it like this. He's a watchdog. He oversees all the police services, makes sure they're accountable, especially important now, with all the tension and scrutiny surrounding policing.
Makes sense. And given Clunis's background, his experience, it seems like he was the perfect fit. But how does his personal story, like his thoughts on allyship and privilege, all that stuff, how does that tie in?
Well, throughout the book, he gets really personal. He talks about his own experiences with allyship, people who helped him along the way, and how all that shaped his understanding of privilege. He even tackles that term white privilege, suggesting it's become a bit of a political football.
That's a tricky one. I mean, how do you even talk about that without, stepping on a landmine?
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from it. He acknowledges the injustices, the systemic inequalities that exist, but he also makes this point that we shouldn't lose sight of those individual acts of kindness and support. People who use their privilege, whatever their background, to help others.
So it's not about denying privilege exists. It's more like challenging us to use it for good.
Exactly. It's a more balanced perspective, right? Moving away from those sweeping generalizations. And to drive home his point, he shares this really personal story about a family that sponsored his mom when she was facing deportation.
Whenever he talks about his mother, you can just feel the love and respect he has for her. Powerful story, really.
It goes to the heart of his message, that there's more good than bad in the world, and that human connection can change things, even when the odds are stacked against you.
Okay, but I want to circle back to something that really stuck with me. He asks this question, what are we hearing? Crime or deep social issues? What did you make of that?
It's like he's challenging us to look beyond the surface. Don't just see the crime, see the underlying social problems that contribute to it.
Treat the illness, not just the symptom.
Right. Don't just react to crime. Address the things that create an environment where crime thrives, like poverty, lack of opportunity, all that.
Which brings us back to his whole crime prevention through social development thing.
Exactly. True safety comes from addressing the root causes, not just locking people up.
It seems like a huge shift, not just for law enforcement, but for, society as a whole. But how does his faith factor into all of this? It seems like a recurring theme throughout the book.
It's definitely a big part of who he is, how he interacts with people, his commitment to service, this unwavering belief in positive change. He saw being a police officer and later Inspector General as a calling, a way to live out his values,
Yeah.
to make a real difference.
It was more than just a job then, like almost a mission.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And his work as a police chaplain, that really highlights this idea of service, being there for his colleagues, offering support, reminding them of the importance of human connection, even in a profession that often demands the opposite.
I bet that was invaluable. I mean, police work is so stressful.
Absolutely, and it adds this layer of compassion, of humanity to his leadership. He's not just a boss, he's a caregiver, a mentor.
We don't always think of leadership in those terms, do we? Like, we focus on goals, giving orders, but Clunis is like redefining what it means to lead, connecting with people, understanding their needs, creating an environment where they feel valued.
Totally. And that resonated with the people he worked with. It built trust, loyalty, a shared sense of purpose.
But let's be real, not everyone is going to be on board with the whole faith-based approach. Some might even see it as, I don't know, inappropriate for public service.
He addresses that. He talks about how being open about his faith wasn't always easy. He faced criticism, even accusations that he was blurring the lines. But he never wavered in his commitment to being authentic.
So he didn't hide who he was, even when it was controversial.
Nope. He felt that being true to himself, even when it was hard, was crucial for building trust. He also emphasized respecting different perspectives, having open dialogue, even with those who didn't agree with him.
That's a good lesson for all of us, right? Being who you are, but also respecting other people's viewpoints. So we've seen him rise through the ranks, take on tough assignments, and now he's leading the charge for change in Winnipeg.
Yeah, he's all about pushing for change. But what's interesting is that he doesn't just focus on the big picture stuff. He also pays attention to the details. Like when he was in charge of those less glamorous departments, the evidence control unit and records management.
Right, not exactly the most exciting assignments.
No, but he used those experiences to learn, to understand how things worked, and to advocate for more efficient, effective practices.
It's like he saw potential for improvement everywhere.
Exactly. It shows that leadership isn't just about being the boss. It's about seeing where things can be better, speaking up, pushing for change, even when it's tough, or maybe people don't want to hear it.
And we can all do that, right? In our own lives, our jobs, our communities.
Absolutely. We all have the power to make a difference.
It really is a radical vision.
Mhm.
But it's deeply rooted in hope, and a belief in the power of human connection. And speaking of hope, Clunis's story is just full of these moments that show how powerful even small acts of kindness can be.
It's true. Like these little things, they can have such a huge ripple effect. Like that story he tells about the young girl who was being bullied at school.
Yeah. That one really got to me. He was a school resource officer, and instead of, dismissing her, he actually listened to her, tried to understand what she was going through, and just offered some words of encouragement.
And it wasn't just a one-time thing. She kept in touch with him as she went through school, telling him how much his words meant to her.
It shows the power of just being there for someone, listening with empathy, offering support. It can be life-changing, especially for someone who feels alone.
It's true. And it reminds us that we never really know how our actions affect others. A small act of kindness can, plant a seed that grows into something amazing.
Like that saying, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. You never know what someone else is going through. Those little acts of compassion can be so important.
Absolutely. And sometimes they come from the most unexpected places. Remember that story about the family that sponsored Clunis's mother? The one who was facing deportation?
Oh, yeah. That was incredible. It just shows you how powerful human connection can be, like transcending differences, overcoming these huge obstacles.
Right. It's proof that we can all be allies, stepping up to support someone in need, even if it means going against the grain or challenging what society says.
It's about that shared humanity, realizing we're all in this together. We all have something to give. And even those little acts of kindness, they can make a difference. They can ripple out and create a more compassionate world.
And Clunis's story just embodies that message so perfectly. Hope, resilience, belief in the possibility of change.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely feeling inspired after this deep dive. Devon Clunis's journey, it's a real reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, no matter our background, no matter what challenges we face.
It has been really great exploring his story with you. What really stood out to you?
So much, honestly. But I guess if I had to choose one thing, it's that realization that we can all be agents of change. It doesn't have to be some big, huge thing. It could just be helping someone out, speaking up against injustice, or just choosing to see the good in people.
That's right. Clunis shows us that change often starts with those small acts of kindness, of connection, of courage. It's about recognizing that everyone deserves to be treated with humanity and working together to create a more just world.
And his whole focus on crime prevention through social development. We can all apply that in our own lives, even if we're not police officers. It's about getting to the root of societal problems, understanding each other, and working together to make things better for everyone.
It goes beyond just one job or one field. We can all be part of making a more just and compassionate society.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to think about. What's one small but meaningful thing you can do today to make a difference in your own community? Maybe it's reaching out to someone who's struggling, volunteering your time, or just choosing to see the world with a bit more hope. Remember, like Devon Clunis shows us, even the smallest actions can create a ripple effect that leads to real change.
It's a great thought to leave on. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep believing in the power of connection to make a difference.